It's here. It's back. It's back. The media, once again, is telling us to mask up. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. Sick of fad diets that work for a couple months and then you gain all the weight back? Well, I'm down 37 pounds on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program, and I've kept that weight off for more than a year. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. I can make this segment 5 seconds long. The media is telling you to mask up again. No.
Don't do it.
And that has been unbelievable for today. No, don't tell them. I don't care if people do it.
I know. I don't care, except for
Don't care.
It did really bother me. I feel this weird rage when I see people in their cars. I saw this lady driving a pink Tesla with a mask on, all by herself in the car.
God, it's not rage. I'm just like, oh, that's sad.
No, but it's actually right. It's not because she's wearing the mask, but because I think she's been fooled to that extent. And I am so angry with how all the people that have supported this nonsense that we've given to people, and they've taken it and changed their lives.
Yeah. And like, never turning back, I guess. And it's true that in some, in Japan, for instance, like mask wearing is pretty common and it has been long before COVID. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But like, if you don't have a reason for it, I just don't get it. But if you want to, look, wear a mask in your car, wear a mask in the shower, wear a mask while you sleep. I just don't care. I'm going to laugh at you if I see it internally. I'm going to laugh on the inside. I'm going to probably roll my eyes, then I'm going to move on with my life. But the media really didn't learn any lessons. The media has not learned any lessons. And one of the things that I have said on the show before I get to the Seattle Times article, trying to fearmonger again, is had we had, one of the concerns I have is that we're going to have a pandemic or something that really is as deadly as they made us believe COVID was, or as, dangerous to people across the health spectrum, not people who are just clinically obese or have comorbidities or something, but for everyone, right? And I'm worried that if we get into a situation like that, because of how COVID was handled, you have half the population that's going to be like, kick rocks. And then we're going to really be in a serious situation because they've lost all confidence in public health officials. And so that's why no mea culpa from public health officials is dangerous. And from politicians like Jay Inslee and Dow Constantine and all the politicians who forced these mandates on us and who, made us so fearful that we didn't see our dying loved ones, et cetera, et cetera. If they were willing to come out and say, hey, we went a little overboard, can you forgive us? I feel like it would do more to get people the next time around to buy in, knowing that there was a recognition that things had gone too far. And then the media. There's never been a mea culpa from the media. I've given a mea culpa. I have apologized publicly multiple times for the extent to which I contributed to the hysteria in early 2020. And I do think for 6 solid months, I contributed to the hysteria on the news. And then I woke up and I was like, wait a second. And so I've been trying to redeem myself. But the media needs to have a mea culpa for things that it got wrong, and it hasn't. So now here you have the Seattle Times. Summer COVID surge approaches in Seattle area as travel season begins. So it's not even that, wait a second, where's the surge? Summer COVID surge approaches. Where is that? So you're just guessing that a summer COVID surge is going to happen?
Oh, yeah. I guess so.
What if it doesn't? It's wild. A summer COVID surge is on its way through Seattle and the region. Infection rates and emergency department visits in King County have been rising since the end of April. Okay, so they're saying this is going up, causing some concern among doctors and public health officials as travel season picks up and people begin gathering more frequently. Quote, this is the time when people should start taking precautions, said Dr. Eric Chow, King County's chief of communicable diseases. I don't know how high this peak is going to be, when it's going to peak, but taking precautions now is the best way for people to be able to mitigate the complications related to COVID. They go on to say state COVID emergency department visits have also gradually increased since the end of April, though at a slightly slower rate, jumping from about 0.5% to 1% of total emergency department visits. Statewide death rates have remained low for months, though more than 400 people in Washington have died from the virus since January. Another update on COVID vaccines will likely come out later this year as scientists tackle ways to keep Americans safe during the upcoming seasons. But before these shots become available, public health officials are pushing people to get the most updated immunizations already on the market. Take those precautions before heading off on vacation and consider wearing a mask while in airports or on planes, Chow said. Still no nuance.
No, and get vaxxed and then get vaxxed again this year?
Still no nuance to, hey, you know, if you've got comorbidities, if you're very old, if you're heavy, if you've got these underlying health conditions, but, you know, if you're a healthy person, you've been fine, go about your life and do your thing. Still no nuance. It's still the world is burning down. Like 0.5% of emergency room visits. And by the way, they don't say whether there was, remember during the pandemic?
Yes.
A COVID emergency room visit could have been for a broken arm and then someone tests positive for COVID-19. So that's another area of trust that we have completely lost, which is it a COVID death or is it a death from something else and someone happened to have COVID? Is it a COVID emergency room visit? Or did they come in there because they got shot in the face and then you tested them and they tested positive for COVID? All of these things, because of the way that you reported on these things, Seattle Times and other outlets, because of the failures for the 4 years of the pandemic, you now have to provide additional context. You now have to provide, you should, you're not going to, but I think you should have to, provide additional context so we know that you're not messing with us. And what I mean by that is when you say that emergency room visits involving COVID have jumped from 0.5% to 1% of total emergency room visits, you need to clarify, is that people who came in for COVID-19? Or is it people who came in for something else? You have to clarify because we don't trust you anymore. And again, when you talk about more than 400 people in Washington have died from the virus since January, because we don't trust you anymore because of how it was reported previously, you need to now tell us how many of those people only died from COVID-19 or died from something else and had COVID-19 or from a complication because they had COVID-19 as an underlying issue. And then how many of those people had comorbidities? How many of those people were particularly susceptible to a respiratory virus, etc.? We're not giving you the grace anymore of being able to report on things with such a lack of granular data because of how much incorrect reporting, misrepresentation you shoved down our throats for 4 years. And that I shoved down your throats for a mere 6 months, which I apologize for.